My childhood was very pleasant, really. Everybody knew everybody, and everybody helped one another. When we was children, well, we had good presents. I can remember at one Christmas when I was small, I had a flashlight, and in the front you did push it along and you did get a red light, and push it the other way you did get a green one. And that was a good little present for us. And another year I can remember that I had a little drum, 2 sticks, and Berry Hill band, they'd come round every Christmas morning, and when they did come, my father did brew beer at that time, and they did stop outside my father's home and play, and then they did have a drink of beer. And I can remember having my little drum, and they put me in the middle of the band, and I played all round the road playing my little drum. And that's a memory which I thought was great in those days. We was 5 brothers, and we was always called the Smiths boys. And if anything went wrong, it was always the Smiths boys that done it. And I can remember the farmer, Sir Hawkins, local lads that would get around. When the farmer did build a wall round, next morning it was pushed down, and of course the farmer came to my father and knocked on the door, and he said, "Your boys has been at it doing damage again." Hubert, which was my father's name, and he said, "Oh," and my father did. He gave us a good idea because he reckoned he thought it was we, and but another time it come, the farmer had a new tank put in, and somebody put a hole in, and round my father, round he came again, and my father kept us in at after school. He wouldn't let us out in the evenings, and so the farmer come about a month or 2 after. We done damage again down the farm. Oh, and when was this, Mr. Hawkins? He said, "Last night." He said, "Get out." He said, "My boys haven't been out." It wasn't my boys. We found out who it was. It was a boy just up the road. He was doing all the damage. But because we was the Smiths boys, and we had 5 of us, we always had the blame. My father asked me in 1938 if I wanted to go down the coal mine to work with him, but I said no, I wouldn't go, which my 2 brothers went. And of course, as I said, naturally, 1939, I was, of course, caught up then.
I am speaking to you from the Cabinet Room at 10 Downing Street. This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
Well, I was working then for a bakery in the village, and of course, me not going into the pit. Of course, it came at September, and war broke out, and of course everybody was a little bit shaken by it all, and yet they thought, well, it wouldn't last very long, and I was called up to join Machine Gun Training Corps in Alderney in the Channel Islands, and I went off on my mother's birthday, the 16th of October 1939. I didn't worry about nothing. It was just normal. We just went, and when you was just 20, you didn't know what was really what was in front of you, and you just went. I caught a train at Gloucester to Folkestone, and then we went over by boat to Isle of Guernsey, and we arrived on the next day, which was the 17th of October. The first thing they done was in big forts, Fort George and Fort Arsenal, those big forts in Alderney. We was gave a mug and told us to go over to the cookhouse and get a cup of tea and a bit of food, which our first meal was a lump of tripe, a lump of dry bread and a mug of tea. Well, I couldn't eat the tripe. I had my tea, cup of tea, and I walked out and walked back because I'd got some sandwiches and that as I took with me. My mother gave me a lot of food to go with, sandwiches, cakes and biscuits. And as I was walking across the court, a young fellow was coming behind me, and I turned round and I said, I couldn't eat that tripe. He said, neither could I. He said, I put the knife in it and he fled off the plate. I said, where'd you come from? And he said, Bishop's Cleeve, outside Cheltenham. I said, oh, I come from Colford in the Forest of Dean. I said, how old are you then? He said, I should be 21 on the 13th of January. I said, yes, and so shall I. And we was born on the same day, on the 13th of January 1919. We asked my mother what time I was born. She couldn't tell me. So we couldn't say who was the oldest out of the two of us. Norman Blake from Bishop's Cleeve, and he's passed away years ago, but now, and we kept together, and he was, we started our training, and I was put first of all into the mechanical of lorries and vehicles, and my pal, he went in as a rangefinder in there, and we done and very, very strict training, and I was up and out onto the court every morning at 7 o'clock. Gave us a rifle which we'd never handled before, and I can always remember some mornings we'd get out on the football field, a little football field there, and hanging there was a dummy German soldier, and we did bayonets on our rifles, and we had to charge the dummy, and the sergeant major did shout to you every time, you've got to get him first. If you don't, he will. And that have always been in my mind ever since. I was speaking Forest like, and they couldn't understand because a lot of them was from Durham and Manchester, and you know their languages is, and of course they got they'd say, one went to an officer and said, I think my fellow there is a fifth columnist. I said, we can't understand him. I said, and that, they did have a laugh. And they recognised a fifth columnist look there. Funny, isn't it? Now, when we done our 6 months training, and we were sent then over to Guernsey. We was there in the forts. And one morning, we was called onto the line, and we was the officer was there, and he called us out where the regiments we had to go into. My pal was called out to the Cheshire Regiment. I was called out for the Manchesters. So I said, well, I said to him, this is where we part. Wasn't many minutes before a fellow coming up through shouting, do anybody want to go in the Cheshires? Do anybody want to go in the Cheshires? Yes, I said, I do. He said, what are you in Manchester? Oh, I want to go in the Manchesters. So he said, let's go up and see if we could change. So we went up to the office, knocked on the door, the officer shouted, come in, and we went in and he said, I'm fed up of changing round. He said, I'm changing no more. And we was about to salute and come back, and he said, come on. He said, now what do you want? So I said, well, this fellow wants to go in the Manchesters. I want to go in the Cheshires. So he changed us round, and that's how I come to be in the Cheshire Regiment. A fortnight after, we was shipped over to Rouen in France. We was there for a fortnight, training and going on route marches. But a fortnight to 3 weeks we was there. We was called out onto the parade one morning, and they said, the officer shouted, fall out, these 6 men. Me and my pal was called out. Another fellow from Chippenham by the name of Valentine, and 3 more. We have to report to the 2nd B Company, 2nd Battalion, the Cheshire Regiment, on the Belgian borders. So we took 2 days to travel by train to our destination. And when we got there, of course, there was the B Company. It was old soldiers. They'd been in the army regulars, and they didn't want nothing to do with us. They didn't. Nobody tried to help us or nothing. There was one fellow, Paddy O'Leary. He was a young one. He offered to help us. He got palliasse for us. He got some food for us, made us some tea, and he made us quite welcome. And he took to me and my pal, and after a while he went to his officer and he said, I'd like to have these 2 soldiers with me, and he was number 1 on the machine gun, which was a Vickers machine gun. So I was put as number 3, and my pal was number 2. And he was the one to see that the ammunition went through quietly, and I did see that I did change the water in the tank. As when it began to get warm, I had to change the can. And well, then a fortnight after, we went up to the front, up onto the Dutch borders. We was there, and for quite a while, for weeks, and in the end, word come through the Belgians had retreated. They'd gone back. A few days after, the French, they'd retreated, and they went back and left us in the middle. We fought at the rear guard, then start to pull ourselves out, rear back, and we came back for a good many miles. And one morning early, our commander, we was on a hill, and he said, I don't know what you think about it. He said, but we are surrounded all but five miles. He said, should we surrender, or do you want to fight your way through? We all said, fight our way through, which we did. And we fought the rear guard all the way back through into Casal. We come to the 15 miles outside Bray Dunes.